Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, let me ask you a question. What happens when knowledge is hidden? What happens when the truth is buried, erased, or dismissed? They say history is written by the victors, but what about the voices that were silenced? What about the scriptures that were removed? The Book of Jubilees is one of those lost texts, cast aside, hidden from the masses, but still holding a truth too powerful to ignore. A book that connects directly to Black people, our history, and our identity. A book that speaks of origins, of divine purpose, of a legacy the world doesn't want us to know. So why was it banned? Why was it stripped from the Bible? And what does it reveal about us? About who we are, where we come from, and the destiny that is still unfolding. Get ready, because we're about to uncover a truth that will shake the foundations of what you've been told. The Book of Jubilees, a lost treasure of truth. Throughout history, certain books have been removed, hidden, or disregarded, not because they lacked value, but because they revealed too much truth. One such book is the Book of Jubilees, an ancient text that was once highly regarded, yet later dismissed and even banned from mainstream biblical canon. But why? Why would a book that details history, prophecy, and divine order be considered too dangerous for the world to read? What was in its pages that made religious leaders and rulers alike decide that it should be erased from public knowledge? The answer lies in power, the power of truth. The Book of Jubilees is not just a retelling of biblical history. It is a revelation that connects deeply to the struggles and triumph of Black people throughout history. It is a book that speaks of origins, exile, restoration, and divine destiny. A book that, if widely understood, could awaken a people to their true heritage and calling. Let's uncover the hidden treasure of the Book of Jubilees and understand why it was hidden from us in the first place. A book of origins and divine order. The Book of Jubilees is often called the Lesser Genesis because it expands on the stories found in the Book of Genesis. It provides a detailed account of the creation of the world, the lives of the patriarchs, and the laws given to humanity. But it does more than just tell a story. It lays out a divine structure, a heavenly timeline that explains the cycles of history, judgment, and restoration. One of the key reasons this book was controversial is that it emphasizes a chosen people, a people given a divine covenant, scattered across the world, yet destined for redemption. Sound familiar? Many scholars and theologians believe that the people described in the Book of Jubilees closely align with the experiences of Black people throughout history, taken from their land, placed in oppression, yet never abandoned by God. If such a revelation became common knowledge, it would change the way people understand history, faith, and identity. That's why this book was hidden, because it speaks to a truth that the world has tried to suppress. The erasure of the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees was once included in the sacred writings of many early Jewish and Christian communities. It was revered in Ethiopia, preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and considered a foundational text. However, over time, religious councils decided to exclude it from the Bible. The reason? It was seen as too radical, too detailed, and too revealing. The same way history has been rewritten to downplay the contributions and heritage of Black people, the Book of Jubilees was removed to keep people from questioning the official narrative. This is not the first time truth has been suppressed. Think about how the history of Africa, its rich civilizations, and its role in biblical history have been downplayed or erased. The same forces that sought to hide this history are the same forces that sought to bury the Book of Jubilees. But no matter how hard the world tries to erase the truth, truth always finds a way to rise. The prophetic connection to Black history, one of the most striking aspects of the Book of Jubilees, is its focus on prophetic timelines and cycles. It speaks of a people who would endure hardship, who would be scattered across nations, but who would ultimately be restored. Now look at Black history, a people taken from their homeland, a people forced into bondage and oppression, a people who maintained their faith, their resilience, and their spirit, a people who continue to rise generation after generation. This pattern is not coincidence, it is prophecy. The Book of Jubilees tells a story that aligns too closely with the experience of Black people around the world, and that is why it was suppressed. Because if we ever fully understood our divine connection, if we ever reclaimed our true history, we would become unstoppable, reclaiming the hidden treasure. So what do we do now? We seek the truth. We dig deeper. We reclaim what was taken from us. The Book of Jubilees was removed, but it was not destroyed. It still exists, waiting to be read, waiting to be understood. Just like our history, just like our legacy, it is still there, a treasure buried beneath the lies of oppression, waiting to be uncovered. It is time to awaken. It is time to rise. It is time to walk in the truth that has been hidden from us for far too long. The Book of Jubilees is more than just an ancient text. It is a key to understanding who we are and where we are going. And when we reclaim that knowledge, nothing can stop us. The connection to Black history is not just a collection of events. It is a roadmap, a series of signs that point us toward who we are, where we've been, and where we are going. But what happens when parts of that history are hidden, erased, or rewritten? What happens when a people are disconnected from their true origins? This is exactly what has happened to Black history. For centuries, the world has tried to erase, distort, and diminish the story of Black people. Our history was reduced to slavery, our contributions were downplayed, and our connection to the Bible was ignored. But the truth is, our story is biblical. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient text that was once considered sacred, but later removed from the biblical canon, tells a story that parallels the journey of Black people. It speaks of a chosen people, a people exiled, a people who would endure suffering, but ultimately be restored. That's not just ancient prophecy, that's our history. Let's uncover the deep connection between the Book of Jubilees and Black history, and why this knowledge is so powerful. A people scattered, a people exiled. One of the most striking themes in the Book of Jubilees is the idea of a scattered people. A people taken from their homeland, forced into servitude, and spread across different nations. The book describes a covenant between God and his people, warning them that if they turned away from righteousness, they would face exile and oppression. Now, look at Black history. For over 400 years, millions of African people were taken from their homeland and scattered across the world, particularly through the transatlantic slave trade. They were stripped of their names, their languages, their traditions, and their identities. The forced separation of families, the breaking of cultural ties, and the brutal conditions of slavery mirror the exile and suffering described in biblical texts. This is not a coincidence. This is a prophetic connection. The Book of Jubilees speaks of a people who would endure hardship, but would never be forgotten by God. Despite oppression, they would survive, fight, and ultimately rise again. Does that sound familiar? A legacy of faith and resilience. One of the most powerful aspects of Black history is the unshakable faith that has carried us through centuries of struggle. Enslaved Africans were forbidden from reading, yet they still found ways to learn. They were forbidden from worshiping freely, yet they still praised God in secret. They were told they were inferior, yet they believed in their divine worth. That resilience, that fire, is the same spirit described in the Book of Jubilees. The book doesn't just speak of suffering, it speaks of deliverance. It teaches that no matter how much oppression a people face, God's promise remains. That even in exile, a divine purpose is still in motion. That those who were cast down will one day rise. We have seen this in Black history time and time again. From Harriet Tubman, who followed the voice of God to lead her people to freedom, to Martin Luther King Jr., who stood against injustice with a Bible in his hand, to the countless unnamed heroes who refused to let oppression define them, faith has been our foundation. The fight to erase our history, just as the Book of Jubilees was removed from the biblical canon, Black history has been rewritten or erased in many ways. Schools teach that our history begins with slavery, ignoring the great civilizations of Africa. Our role in the Bible is often overlooked, even though African nations and people played key roles in biblical history. The resilience of our faith is minimized, despite the fact that Black people have been at the forefront of some of the greatest religious movements in history. Why is this happening? Because knowledge is power. If a people don't know who they are, they can be controlled. If a people don't know their history, they can be misled. If a people don't see their connection to God's plan, They might believe they are forgotten, but we are not forgotten. The Book of Jubilees, just like the lost chapters of our history, still exists. And once we reclaim it, we reclaim our power. A call to remember, a call to rise. We are living in a time of awakening. The truth that was once hidden is being revealed. Black history is being rediscovered. The lost books, the forgotten scriptures, the erased identities, they are all coming to light. The Book of Jubilees speaks of a time of restoration, a time when the scattered will be gathered, when the truth will no longer be silenced. And we are witnessing that right now. So what do? We learn. We dig deeper into our history, our faith, and our divine connection. We teach. We pass this knowledge to the next generation so they never have to wonder where they come from. We rise. We refuse to let oppression define us because we are greater than the struggles we faced. The truth is ours. The future is ours. And the time to reclaim it is now. Stay strong, stay aware, stay walking in the truth. Why they tried to erase it, history has always been controlled by those in power. They decide what gets remembered and what gets forgotten, what is celebrated and what is silenced. The Book of Jubilees is one of those forgotten treasures, erased from mainstream biblical canon, hidden from the masses, and dismissed as unnecessary. But when you ask why it was erased, the answer becomes clear. Because it reveals too much truth. Because it challenges the narrative. Because it gives power back to the people who need it most. The Book of Jubilees is not just another ancient text. It holds a connection to Black history, prophecy, and identity that the world has tried to suppress. It tells a story that mirrors the struggles and triumphs of a people who were scattered, oppressed, and yet destined to rise again. So why did they try to erase it? Because knowledge is power, and if a people don't know who they are, they can be controlled. Let's break it down and uncover the real reasons why this powerful book was hidden from us. Reason 1, it exposes the true origins of a chosen people. The Book of Jubilees expands on the Book of Genesis, offering a detailed account of the world's creation, the early patriarchs, and God's covenant with his people. It speaks about a chosen people, a group who would face exile, hardship, and oppression, but would one day be restored. Now, think about Black history. Millions of African people were taken from their homeland, stripped of their identity, and scattered across the world through slavery and colonization. Many scholars believe that the biblical descriptions of exile and suffering bear a strong resemblance to the experiences of Black people throughout history. If this connection were widely understood, it would change everything. Black people would realize they are not forgotten, not abandoned, but instead part of a divine plan that has been unfolding for centuries. That's why they erased it. Because a people who know their true identity cannot be manipulated. Reason 2, it reveals the power of faith and deliverance. One of the key themes in the Book of Jubilees is the idea that even in exile, even in suffering, deliverance is coming. It speaks of cycles, times of oppression, followed by times of restoration. This message is dangerous to those in power. Why? Because oppressed people who believe in deliverance are impossible to break. Look at Black history. Enslaved Africans were not allowed to read, but they still found ways to educate themselves. They were beaten, chained, and dehumanized, but they still found strength in their faith. They were told they had no future, but they still fought for freedom, for justice, and for the right to determine their own destiny. This resilience comes from a deep spiritual connection, a belief that no matter how much oppression we face, God has not forgotten us. The Book of Jubilees reinforces this message. It tells a story of faith, survival, and ultimate restoration. And that's a message that oppressors never want the oppressed to hear. Reason, it challenges the control of religious institutions. The decision to remove the Book of Jubilees from the Bible wasn't just about control. Religious authorities throughout history have carefully selected which books should be included in the official canon. If a book contained too much revelation, if it encouraged people to seek knowledge for themselves, it was often removed. Why? Because organized religion has often been used as a tool to control the masses. They wanted people to rely on their interpretations of Scripture. They didn't want people asking questions that challenged their authority. They didn't want a book that empowered the oppressed with the knowledge of their divine heritage. By removing the Book of Jubilees, they ensured that only a select few had access to its truths. They kept it hidden because they feared what would happen if people, especially black people, realized they were part of something greater. Reason 4, it connects too closely to black history. The most unsettling reason why the Book of Jubilees was erased is its undeniable connection to black history. It speaks of a people who would be taken from their land, enslaved, and spread across nations. It speaks of suffering, but also of a promised restoration. It describes a history that is eerily similar to what black people have experienced for centuries. This is not a coincidence. The decision to hide this book was the same decision that led to the erasure of black history from schools, the downplaying of African civilizations, and the rewriting of history to make black people believe they have no significant past. Because if black people knew their true history, if they understood their deep spiritual and biblical connection, they would no longer accept the lies that have been forced upon them. They would stand up, they would rise, they would reclaim their power. Reclaiming the hidden truth, the Book of Jubilees was removed, but it was never destroyed. Just like black history, just like our spiritual identity, it still exists. And now more than ever, it is time to reclaim what was taken from us. It is time to seek knowledge. It is time to reconnect with our true history. It is time to awaken to the truth that was hidden for so long. Because when we do, nothing can stop us. They tried to erase it. They tried to silence it. But truth cannot be erased forever. The truth is rising. The awakening has begun. And we are unstoppable. A call to reclaim the truth. For centuries, truth has been hidden, rewritten, and distorted. The powerful have controlled the narrative, deciding what history is told and what is erased. But now, in this time of awakening, we are being called to reclaim what was taken from us. The Book of Jubilees is one of those hidden truths, removed from the Bible, buried in secrecy and dismissed by religious institutions. But why? Because it holds knowledge that was never meant to be lost. Because it speaks directly to a people who have been scattered, oppressed, and yet still carry divine purpose. The truth has been hidden for too long, but no matter how deep they try to bury it, truth always rises. And now, it is time for us to rise with it. This is a call to reclaim the truth, a call to reconnect with our true history, our true identity, and our true purpose. Because once we reclaim that knowledge, we become unstoppable. Reclaiming the lost history, one of the greatest injustices done to black people, is the erasure of their history. We are often taught that our story begins with slavery, as if Africa had no kingdoms, no culture, no wisdom before the transatlantic slave trade. But that is a lie. African civilizations were among the greatest in history, filled with scholars, kings, warriors, and visionaries. The same erasure happened in the Bible. Many people never realize how deeply Africa is connected to biblical history. Moses spent time in Africa. Jesus himself lived in Africa as a child. Some of the earliest Christian churches were in Africa. Yet this connection is often ignored or dismissed. The Book of Jubilees provides deeper insights into these historical and spiritual connections, but it was removed from mainstream teachings. Why? Because it empowers those who have been oppressed. When people understand their true history, they walk differently. They think differently. They move with power. And that is exactly what they tried to prevent. But the truth is still there, and it's time for us to take it back. Reclaiming our spiritual identity. For generations, faith has been the foundation of black resilience. Even through slavery, oppression, and systemic injustice, black people have held on to their faith with unshakable strength. Why? Because deep down we know who we are. We are not lost. We are not forgotten. We are not powerless. We are part of something greater. We are part of a divine plan that was written long before oppression tried to define us. The Book of Jubilees reinforces this, speaking of a people who would be scattered but never abandoned. A people who would face hardship but would one day rise again. That message is more than history, it's prophecy. It's time to stop letting the world tell us who we are. It's time to reclaim our spiritual identity and recognize that we were chosen for something bigger. Reclaiming the power of truth. They say knowledge is power, and that's exactly why truth has been hidden from us. The more we learn about our history, our faith, and our identity, the more powerful we become. And that is what has always been feared. But now, we have a choice. We can continue to accept the lies we've been fed, or we can seek the truth for ourselves. We can let history be erased, or we can rewrite the narrative. We can let oppression define us, or we can stand up, reclaim our power, and walk in our true purpose. A call to action. This is not just another history lesson. This is a call to action, a call to read, research, and uncover the truth that has been hidden from us. A call to reconnect with our spiritual roots and understand the power of our faith. A call to rise above the limitations placed on us and step into our divine destiny. Because the time for being silent is over. The time for being lost is over. The time for questioning our worth is over. We are reclaiming the truth. We are reclaiming our history. We are reclaiming our power. And once we do, nothing can stop us. The truth is rising. The awakening is here, and we are ready. The connection to a chosen people throughout history. Certain groups have been marked as chosen, set apart for a divine purpose, guided through hardship, and destined for restoration. But what does it truly mean to be chosen? And more importantly, who are the chosen people? The Book of Jubilees, a sacred text that was removed from the biblical canon, provides a deeper understanding of this question. It expands on the stories found in Genesis and Exodus, offering details about God's covenant with a special group of people. It speaks of a people who would endure suffering, oppression, and exile, but would ultimately be restored to their rightful place. For many, this story sounds familiar, not just as ancient history, but as their own history. For centuries, Black people across the world have faced exile, captivity, and systemic oppression. From the transatlantic slave trade to colonialism, from segregation to systemic racism, the journey of Black people mirrors the very prophecy laid out in the Book of Jubilees. This connection is not a coincidence. Could it be that Black people are among those chosen by God? Could it be that the struggles faced throughout history are part of a greater divine plan? Let's dive deeper into the connection between Black people and the chosen people of the Bible. The story of a scattered people, one of the most powerful themes in the Book of Jubilees, is the scattering of God's people. In the Bible, we read that when Israel turned away from righteousness, they were exiled from their homeland and taken into captivity. They were scattered among the nations, forced into servitude, and stripped of their identity. Now compare this to Black history. Millions of Africans were taken from their homeland, placed in chains, and forced into slavery. They were given new names, forbidden from speaking their native languages, and separated from their families. They were denied their history, told they had no past, no culture, and no identity beyond slavery. Does that sound familiar? It should, because it mirrors the very prophecies found in the Bible about the chosen people being scattered among the nations. The world has tried to erase this connection. Schools don't teach it, churches don't preach it, but the truth remains. Black people's history aligns with biblical prophecy in ways that cannot be ignored. A covenant that cannot be broken despite the suffering and exile. The Book of Jubilees emphasizes one key truth. God never forgets his chosen people. Even when they are scattered, even when they face oppression, even when they struggle to see their worth, the covenant still stands. This is why, no matter what Black people have faced throughout history, they have remained strong, resilient, and deeply connected to faith. Enslaved Africans, though forbidden from reading, still learned the Bible and created powerful spiritual songs. Black churches became the foundation of liberation movements, from abolition to civil rights. Even today, Black communities across the world hold on to faith in the face of adversity. This is not a coincidence. This is spiritual DNA. No matter how much oppression has tried to destroy Black people, the connection to God's promise cannot be erased. The prophecy of restoration, the Book of Jubilees, does not end in suffering. It does not leave the chosen people in exile. Instead, it speaks of restoration. It prophesies that one day the scattered people will be brought back together. Their true identity will be revealed and they will walk in their divine purpose once again. This is the season we are in right now. More Black people are uncovering their true history and biblical connection. The lost knowledge that was hidden for centuries is coming to light. There is an awakening happening, a spiritual and historical revival. What was once erased is now being restored, and this is just the beginning. a call to remember who we are. The truth is this: Black people are part of a greater story, a story of endurance, a story of faith, a story of chosen identity. For too long, the world has tried to tell Black people who they are. For too long, history books have reduced Black history to slavery and struggle. For too long, religious institutions have ignored the deeper biblical connections. But no more. This is a call to wake up, rise up, and reclaim our true identity. Seek knowledge. Dig deeper into history, scripture, and prophecy. Strengthen faith. Hold on to the spiritual power that has carried our ancestors for centuries. Walk in purpose. Understand that Black people are not forgotten. We are part of something bigger than oppression, bigger than struggle, bigger than history itself. We are part of prophecy. We are part of divine restoration. We are part of the chosen. The world may have tried to erase this truth, but truth cannot be erased forever. The time to reclaim it is now.